Well, we have a very interesting program today. We've talked about successful leaders in politics. We've pioneers that have
We even
cut
talked
down.
about women, a couple
Oh,
of weeks
well,
ago.
yes. Politicians, whether it be he or she, all right?
Yes, right.
For the modern day people, we don't want to offend anyone. But today, we're going to visit about people who were successful leaders in business in
Right.
Carthage and Panola County.
Right.
And you have on my list to start out talking about Mr. A.W. DeBerry.
Yes.
Now, not DeBerry.
Well, depends on who's saying it.
All
I
right.
think they call it all kinds of ways. From him, to honor him, the name of the community was chosen, DeBerry, we call it. But he was a lawyer back during the time of the Civil War and early in this county. And he trained many other lawyers. It's hard for us to realize that to study law, you studied in a lawyer's office. And so we have the records of a number of lawyers who studied in Mr. DeBerry's office and then passed the bar exam, see.
So they served as an
And
apprentice and
yes,
then took the exam.
that's the way they trained as apprentices. And this went on for a number of years, you see, after Panola County was established. And he was one of those that was a trainer of lawyers. Then when the Civil War came along, he organized a company in Panola County in 1862 that became a part of Randall's regiment.
Mm-hmm.
And he was involved in the Civil War, the rest of the war, till 1865, 3 years. And he came back then, and he was so popular that the newspaper and the people publicly wanted him to be advanced in some kind of state office. But, of course, we were in Reconstruction period from the time that the war ended in 1865. For about 10 years, we were just lower than dirt, local people were. So there was no chance for a former Confederate soldier, because we were under military control of the Yankees. And so he was not pushed for anything, nobody else was, until we could get a chance to vote. You see, those Confederate soldiers weren't even allowed to vote until they took what was called the Iron-Bound Oath of never taking up arms again and all that indignity that they had to go through with. Anyway, when we began to get control again, at the end of the Reconstruction period, the newspaper, which was run then, this was early days of the Panola Watchman. See, it was born in the 1870s. So Tom Bowers was the editor, and he immediately started boosting Craig for state governor.
Mm-hmm.
But Mr. Craig wrote a letter to the paper and announced to the people that he would not attempt such a thing because he wouldn't have any kind of chance of being elected, and he'd rather that people would put their influence on somebody that had a chance to be elected. And so he did not run, but he did become Secretary of State. He was appointed by the governor who was elected. He was appointed Secretary of State, and he served in that office from 1874 to 76. So he was a pretty important individual to come right out of that. So he was a successful man from the lawyer angle in the very early days of Panola County. And I think it's well that we recognize some of the contributions that people have made. Now we have a historical marker in his honor out at DeBerry.
Okay.
Just on 31, just off of 79.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry about my voice.
Oh, I understand. There's just days you can't do a thing in the world about that. Moving from DeBerry back into the central location of Carthage, R.E. Tribute?
Tribute.
Tribute.
Tribute. Many of the old-timers have asked me, what do you know about Tribute? And I said, well, just what I've read, of course. I didn't have a chance to know him personally, but the more I read about him, the more I admire what a vivacious worker he was. Mr. Tribute was a native-born Pinole County, and his father had been a great success, and R.E. was the youngest child in that family, I understand. And the father died when R.E. was just a little boy. But he was such an ambitious little fellow that he started his business acumen with lemonade stands and that sort of thing like kids used to do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do that anymore because the ice cream man comes along the street and so on now. But anyway, in those days, lemonade was a rarity. So he had a successful lemonade stand and made a few dollars, doing that. But every dollar, apparently, that he made, he saved. And when he was 15 years old, he opened his first store on the square. His father was a doctor and a store owner, and had a building on the square. And this boy and Miss Margie Neal did a big write-up on him in the East Texas Register in 1908. And I'm capturing as many of these old papers as possible, putting them under plastic so they won't crumble. But here, this is the corner store up here on the square, the southeast corner of the square. And, of course, that's not the original building. That's where it was.
Now, this is the building that Carthage Drug presently is located in. Is that right?
I don't...
Would that be correct or not? It certainly looks that way.
It does look it, doesn't it? It sure does. Well, that's the building that he later developed a big store in. And I thought it was on the south side. Let's see, he had a bank later that was extended on part of that. Let's see, here's the picture of it with the bank on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the amazing thing about this man was that he opened the first little grocery store and small sales of things when he was 15 years old. And the store grew as he advanced in age and matured and got to be a store that just handled everything and made fine profits. Then in his 20s, he went into the sawmill business. Put in a sawmill because lumber was in demand. A lot of building was going on. And he established a sawmill near Carthage, just in the suburbs, I guess. Well, one much. Carthage was the village then, but it's just outside the town. And a planing mill, and sold an immense amount of lumber. And it was so successful that he opened a second sawmill, started it over between Gary and Timpson in a sawmill center in the forest. In those days they'd saw up the timber in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a bigger mill than the one in Carthage. And it just rolled the money in. Now, at each of these mills, he did what was customary at all mills. He set up a commissary where all the hands that worked at the mill did their shopping. Just keep everything they needed. And so he was making money two ways, from the mill and from the commissary, which was customary in all the 1800s and really the first quarter of this century. That's the way they did it. But that that mill community grew so that it was named Tribute. The little sawmill village was called Tribute. And this was a big success. And all this time he was enlarging and increasing the stock in his store on the square. And he got into possession of so much wealth that he wanted to help take care of his money, so he went into the banking business and became president of the Planters National Bank. And I did not have time to go back and check on the old First National Bank, but I believe it's the beginning of
I
it.
believe you're right. I have heard this story before, and I'm going to agree with you. You're absolutely on target on that.
Right. That Mr. Smith in Shreveport had opened the bank, and he and Mr. Trabue bought controlling interest in it and became the president. And another dignitary, a fine leader of the community, Judge Boren, was the vice president. And they developed that bank, and now that was established right next to his store.
Mm-hmm.
So there he was with a bank on the square and a big store on the square and two very productive sawmills. And the money was rolling in. Well, he bought a store that was going out of business on, I don't know which side of the square the leader was on, but he bought the leader. And he put a manager in it and ran it for a while on another side of the square. And it was his store, but another man was running it.
Mm-hmm.
And he used, for the manager for a while, he used Mr. Butler, who was a brother of O.H. Butler, that was one of the ones we're going to talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
But then later he had his brother, who had over on the south side of the square now, had a store. And the brother died and had a good-sized stock in his store, and he bought it. At one time, he had 3 stores around the square, plus a bank. He just about owned Carthage.
He really did.
And during all that time now, the amazing thing was, he was building houses because he was cutting lumber.
Had a sawmill or two.
Had 2 sawmills. And his own residence became one of the show places in Carthage, and still is.
I think it still stands,
Still
does it not?
stands, and that's where our organization had a tea, Sweetheart Tea.
All right, for all you with trivia now, where is this house located? Let them think for just a second.
Okay.
Okay, now tell them.
It is now the Blue House on North St. Mary Street, the 3-story house that has been changed in...
I'm hoping, I was going to try to get it in the camera if I can find it there.
The pictures
and this
of
is it right up here. I doubt if you can see it
It is
properly.
an interesting house still.
It really
is.
It's a beautiful
It's a
homestead.
beautiful old homestead still. And this was his residence in 1908 when this paper was published. And then he went also, another thing that we haven't mentioned, he went into the opera house business and developed an opera house. Now, to say that word to people today, they just don't understand why there'd be an opera house in Carthage. There were 2 at one time.
But there was no picture shows.
No
back then.
picture shows and no auditoriums otherwise. And these opera house owners brought shows in. And shows organized, got plays together, and traveled. And they would contract to be here at a certain time, and the opera house would be open. And in both cases, now Mr. Lacey had an opera house also. Mr. Lacey's opera house was where Williams Furniture now is. But Mr. Trabue's, I think by what I've read, was down Sabine Street, down close to where the Lacey's lived, in that area. I don't know the exact spot, but it was on that block down there. But he instigated the opera house business. And then, to widen his interest, he put in livery stables. Had fine horses himself, and then he had horses to sell. Of course, he had managers managing all these, but he was the guiding hand over all of it. Now, that was a pretty busy businessman to make all of that. And in 1908, when this paper was published, he was considered the wealthiest man in Carthage.
And I believe the article had him at $250,000.
$250,000. Now, that was a heck of a lot of money in that day. It would be equivalent to several million today.
Yes.
And
You were saying that the person worked probably for 50 cents a day back then
yes, labor went at about 50 cents a
to
day.
keep everything in proportion.
Right, and you think about a man coming up with that kind of a fortune from an orphan boy. He was a self-made man. He just had the dynamic desire to accumulate things and to accomplish something. Now, I want to research further to see just what happened to him in his last years. That I haven't found anywhere, and perhaps I will eventually. But I think he certainly is an inspiration to any of us, because this was a pioneer village, and he was one of the actually guiding stars to bringing good things to Carthage. And not many of those come along, that are so successful that they branch out and try something else and involve a lot of people as employees. Think how many people he had jobs for.
You bet.
In those 2 sawmills, and then in all of his businesses. And I don't know how he managed them all in 24 hours a day. I truly don't. Because when you list them, your fingers give out counting them. So he certainly is one to be admired for what he accomplished in Carthage.
And then following him is a gentleman named O.H. Butler.
Yes, O.H. Butler had a clothing dry goods store. And I have found in reading on the Times at that time, it was located where Smith and Rogers now is, where Hawthorne's later was. Yes. I know my first memory of it is when my 2 sisters got married in about 1918. And they bought their wedding dresses at O.H. Butler. And they had china pictures, pretty little pictures with O.H. Butler gift engraved in gold on them.
Is that right?
Because they were so proud of those. That was part of their wedding trousseau, those little pictures, and I used to see them when I was a child. Well, he gave trade gifts, when you traded with him. He had various kinds. They chose what they wanted, I think, from a variety, like we do where they have dishes at stores today, and you trade so much and get certificates and get a plate or get a something. Well, he gave chinaware. And here, not many weeks ago, Alwyn Whitaker brought us 2 bowls from that store with O.H. Butler engraved on them that his mother had kept all these years.
I'll declare.
And this will go in our museum as a symbol of what stores were like 75 years ago, say. But O.H. Butler handled the finest in clothing.
Sounds like he had a good feel of marketing if he had his name on his china as well.
Yes, he did. He had and I don't believe I have an ad of his. He had ads in the paper too, but he had women's clothes, everything for a woman, everything for a man. Different departments in his store, like department stores have today. And he advertised, and I noticed in those early papers, he advertised certain brands of clothes, the finest brands that were available. And for Carthage to have that made him real proud.
You bet.
And I do not know, I sort of think that the Hawthorne interest bought that store from him when he retired. I'm not positive about that. But his store was still there. Well, my sisters married, both of them in 1918. The little girl out at Gary that did the study of the changes in the businesses, she did a little chart on those back several years ago, and she had him here. She did it for each 10 years, and in the years between 1910 and 1920, she had him in that location on the square. She had talked to Mr. Claybo about it, and so I think that the Hawthorne heirs bought it following that. Maybe Mr. T. Hawthorne bought it
Mm-hmm.
before he died. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been able to find that. But O.H. Butler had a very successful business here.
You know, we could go on and talk and talk and talk, and our time is just pushed right to the time
All
for
right.
the news.
If we've used up our time, we'll quit there.
And we'll save
We
these
have
others.
a-
We have another program right
we
here.
have a champion, Claude Pollard,
Let's-
to go with next.
Let's save that till next
All right,
time. Okay.
all right. We're out of time. I was
It's-
afraid we would be.
It's always interesting to talk about places that you walk into every day on the
Right,
square and think
right.
about, my gosh,
Well,
back
you
in.
see, Claude Pollard is another one that built on North St. Mary, and the house is still standing. So we'll talk about that.
We'll do that next time.
Okay.
Thank you for being with us, and I hope you
Thank
get to
you.
feeling better. I know
I
that
hope so,
this
too.
change in the weather is going
Well,
to get everybody.
and pollen gets me.
It does.
I don't know which one, but one of
One
them.
of them does. Thank our viewing and listening audience for being with us today. We hope that this has been an interesting program for you, as it has been for us. We always enjoy our Thursdays with Mrs. LaGrone, and thank you for coming and being with us, Mrs.
And
LaGrone.
you've
once
been
again.
away and had a good time.
Oh, I did. Had a wonderful time.
That's good.
Wonderful
That's good.
time. Until this time tomorrow when our sheriff will be here, have a good day.